The sky above Karen 9 burned with red fire. Broken warships fell from the clouds like dying stars. Smoke covered the ruined city, and the sound of explosions never fully stopped. For 6 years, humans and the Varkal Empire fought across the galaxy. Entire planets were destroyed during the war. But Karen 9 was different. Soldiers from both sides called it the Cursed World, because strange things happened here. People disappeared without bodies. Military signals suddenly went silent, and entire armies vanished inside the dark ruins. Tonight, cold wind moved through empty streets filled with broken tanks and dead machines. Shattered buildings stood like giant skeletons under the burning sky. Captain Elias Varn walked carefully through the ruins with 5 human soldiers behind him. Their boots crushed broken glass and ash as they moved forward with rifles ready. Nobody spoke much. The city felt wrong, too quiet. Elias looked toward a destroyed tower ahead of them while rain slowly started falling from the dark clouds above. "Command said the signal came from below this sector," one soldier whispered. Another soldier looked nervous. "I still think this mission is bad luck. Stay focused," Elias answered calmly. The team continued deeper into the ruined streets. Old alien symbols covered the broken walls around them. Many were burned black by explosions. Then suddenly, a strange sound echoed through the darkness. Not a scream, not metal, something softer, almost like whispering. The soldiers immediately stopped walking. "You heard that?" One asked quietly. Nobody answered, but everyone heard it. The whisper came again, distant and unclear, moving somewhere beneath the streets. One nervous soldier tightened his grip on his weapon. "This place gives me bad feelings." Elias activated the small light attached to his armor and moved toward an underground entrance hidden beneath fallen metal beams. The whisper became louder. Now it almost sounded like crying. The soldiers exchanged worried looks before following Elias underground. The tunnel below smelled like smoke and burned wires. Emergency red lights flashed weakly across long metal hallways. Many doors had been ripped apart like paper. Something powerful had attacked this place. As the team moved deeper underground, strange claw marks appeared across the walls, deep enough to cut through solid steel. One soldier suddenly froze. "What is that?" he whispered. Everyone looked ahead. Fresh blood covered the floor near the next hallway. But there were no bodies anywhere, only drag marks disappearing into darkness. The air suddenly felt colder. Then, without warning, the lights above them started flickering violently. A loud metallic sound echoed somewhere deeper inside the facility. The youngest soldier turned pale. "Captain, maybe we should leave," before Elias could answer. The soldier at the back screamed loudly. Everyone turned instantly, but he was gone. Only his rifle remained on the floor. The tunnel behind them was empty, dark, and silent. Fear quickly spread through the group. Soldiers pointed weapons into the darkness from every direction, breathing heavily, searching for movement. Where did he go? Someone whispered shakily. Nobody knew. Then came the whisper again, closer this time. "Help." The voice sounded small, weak, and frightened. Elias slowly looked toward a giant metal door at the end of the hallway. The words "Research Division" were barely visible above it. The door was slightly open. A faint blue light escaped from inside. Elias stepped forward carefully while the others followed with shaking hands. The room beyond looked like a destroyed laboratory. Broken computers sparked beside shattered glass chambers. Dead scientists covered the floor. Many looked terrified even after death. At the center of the room stood one final glass chamber, still untouched. Inside sat a small alien child. She looked no older than 8 years old. Thin arms wrapped around her knees while silver hair covered part of her face. Strange glowing marks moved slowly across her pale skin. She looked weak, scared, and completely alone. For a moment, nobody moved. One soldier lowered his rifle slightly, confused. "That's it." Another frowned. "This is the weapon?" The child slowly lifted her head, revealing glowing golden eyes filled with fear. Then suddenly every computer screen inside the lab turned on at once. Warning alarms exploded across the room. Red lights flashed violently overhead. The glass chamber shattered outward without anyone touching it. The soldiers immediately raised weapons again, panic spreading across their faces. "Captain, move away from her!" Someone shouted, but the child did not attack. She only stared directly at Elias, trembling badly around her. Metal objects slowly began floating into the air by themselves. The walls started cracking. Lights burst overhead one after another. The entire underground facility shook violently like an earthquake. One terrified soldier screamed, "Shoot her now!" But Elias did not fire because the child was crying. Real tears rolled down her face while fear filled her glowing eyes. Then in a weak, broken voice, she quietly whispered only one word, "Human." Suddenly something massive roared deep beneath the facility. The sound shook every wall around them, and then the lights went completely dark. Darkness swallowed the laboratory in seconds. The flashing alarms stopped, the lights died. And for one terrible moment, nobody inside the room could see anything. Only the sound of heavy breathing filled the air. Then came another roar from deep below the facility. Louder this time, powerful enough to shake dust from the ceiling. The frightened soldiers quickly activated the lights on their rifles. Thin white beams cut through the darkness and landed on the small alien child standing near the broken chamber. She did not move. She looked terrified. Captain Elias slowly raised one hand toward his men. "Nobody shoots." "But Captain, that is an order," Elias said firmly. The soldiers looked nervous but lowered their rifles slightly. The child stared at Elias carefully, like she was waiting for him to attack her too. Then suddenly every metal table in the room vibrated at once. Tools rolled across the floor by themselves, and broken computer screens sparked wildly. The child stepped backward immediately, fear filling her glowing eyes. "No," she whispered softly. Almost instantly the shaking stopped. Elias noticed it right away. Her powers reacted to fear. The more afraid she became, the more dangerous the room around her turned. Before anyone could speak again, a voice suddenly exploded through the emergency speakers above them. "Warning, Subject 0 has been released. All personnel evacuate immediately. Containment failure." The soldiers exchanged terrified looks. One whispered, "Subject 0?" Another looked at the child with horror. What did these people create? The girl covered her ears painfully as the loud warning echoed through the room. Elias slowly walked closer to her, careful not to scare her. "It's okay," he said quietly. The child looked shocked, hearing calmness in his voice. Most people probably screamed at her, feared her, or tried hurting her, but not this human. Suddenly gunfire echoed somewhere outside the laboratory, followed by screams. The entire team froze. Then their radio devices came alive with broken messages. "Captain Varn, respond. We are under attack. Something is inside the facility." Static swallowed the signal. One soldier moved toward the door nervously. "We need to leave now." Then heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway outside, slow and unnatural. Clang, clang. The soldiers aimed their rifles toward the entrance, fingers shaking on triggers. A giant shadow slowly moved across the hallway wall. Whatever approached them was massive. The child suddenly grabbed Elias's arm tightly. For the first time she looked directly terrified. "It found me," she whispered. Before Elias could ask what she meant, the laboratory door exploded inward. A huge creature crashed into the room, covered in black armor-like skin with glowing red eyes and long claws, sharp enough to cut metal. One soldier screamed and opened fire immediately. Bullets slammed into the monster, but the creature barely slowed down. In one violent movement, it threw the soldier across the room hard enough to break a steel wall. Chaos exploded everywhere. The remaining soldiers fired desperately while backing away. Sparks and smoke filled the laboratory as bullets hit machines and walls. But the monster only cared about one thing: the child. It charged directly toward her with terrifying speed. The little girl froze in fear, unable to move. Then Elias stepped between them. The creature raised one massive claw to strike him down. But before the attack landed, everything inside the laboratory suddenly stopped moving. The air itself felt heavy. The monster froze completely in place. Trapped by an invisible force, the soldiers stared in shock. The child's glowing eyes now burned like golden fire. Around her, metal debris slowly floated into the air again. Entire walls cracked under invisible pressure, and every light in the room exploded at once. The creature roared furiously while trying to move, but it could not escape. Then the child looked at the monster with tears in her eyes and quietly whispered, "Leave us alone." A second later, the creature flew backward across the room like it had been hit by a missile, smashing through multiple walls before disappearing deep into the darkness beyond. Silence filled the laboratory again. The soldiers looked horrified. Nobody understood what they had just seen. The little girl stared down at her own shaking hands, frightened by her own power. Then suddenly blood began running from her nose, and her glowing eyes faded weakly. She collapsed forward from exhaustion. Elias quickly caught her before she hit the ground. The child looked painfully small in his arms now, weak and trembling. "She's just a kid," Elias said quietly. One soldier stared at him like he was insane. "Captain, that thing protected her." Another whispered fearfully, "No, it was hunting her." Suddenly the emergency speakers activated again, but this time the voice sounded different, colder. "Attention surviving personnel. The child must not leave this planet. Termination protocol has been authorized." Then the entire facility began shaking violently again. Far above them, something enormous moved across the sky. Elias looked upward slowly, his expression darkening. Enemy ships had arrived, and they were coming for the child. Red warning lights flashed across the underground halls while dust fell from the ceiling. Far above the ruined city, giant enemy warships filled the burning sky of Charon 9. Their engines glowed like red stars through the storm clouds. Inside the broken laboratory, nobody spoke for several seconds. The soldiers stared at the unconscious alien child in Captain Elias's arms. Some looked afraid. Others looked ready to shoot her at any second. Then the oldest soldier finally broke the silence. "We cannot keep her," he said carefully. "She is the reason those things are here," another answered quickly. Elias ignored both of them and looked down at the child instead. Even after everything they had seen, she still looked small and fragile, not like a monster powerful enough to terrify entire fleets. Suddenly, the team's communication device crackled again. "Captain Varn, respond immediately," a nervous voice ordered. Elias activated the radio. "This is Varn." Static filled the signal for a moment before command answered. "We detected Varkal warships entering orbit." "How many?" Elias asked, already knowing the answer would be bad. The operator hesitated. "Too many." The soldiers exchanged worried looks. No fleet would send this much firepower for a single child, unless something far worse was happening. Then command continued speaking. "You are ordered to secure the asset immediately," Elias frowned. "Asset?" "The child," the voice answered coldly. The room became quiet again. Elias slowly looked around the destroyed laboratory. Dead scientists still covered the floor around them like forgotten ghosts. "She's not an asset," he said quietly. No answer came from the radio for a few seconds. Then command spoke again in a lower voice. "Captain, that thing is responsible for the destruction of 3 military stations." One soldier stared in shock. Another whispered, "3 stations?" The voice continued. "Entire crews disappeared overnight. We believe Subject 0 loses control during emotional instability. Your mission is simple. Bring her alive if possible. And if not?" Elias asked coldly. Silence answered him first. Then came the reply he expected. "Terminate the target." The child suddenly moved weakly in Elias's arms at the exact moment those words were spoken, like she understood every single one. Her small fingers tightened around his armor slightly. Fear crossed her face even while unconscious. Elias's expression darkened. "She's not dying here," he said. Before command could answer, Elias shut off the radio completely. One soldier looked shocked. "Captain, you just ignored direct orders." Elias stood slowly while carrying the child carefully. "Move," he ordered. The team left the ruined laboratory and entered the dark emergency tunnels beyond. Red warning lights still flashing above them as they moved deeper underground. Distant explosions echoed from the surface. The invasion had already started. One nervous soldier kept glancing at the child. How can something so small do all this? Nobody answered him, because nobody understood it either. After several minutes, the team reached an old transport station hidden beneath the city. Abandoned military trains still rested silently along broken tracks. Rainwater dripped from cracked pipes overhead, while emergency lights flickered weakly across the station walls. Elias carefully placed the child onto an old metal bench while checking the map device on his wrist. "We take the eastern tunnel," he said. "It leads to the extraction zone outside the city." One soldier suddenly grabbed Elias's arm. "Captain." Elias turned. The soldier pointed silently toward the child. Her glowing eyes were open again. She looked around the station, nervously like a frightened animal trapped somewhere unfamiliar. The moment Elias stepped closer, her breathing calmed slightly. But when another soldier moved near her, the station lights instantly flickered violently. Metal pipes above them bent loudly with terrible pressure. "Easy," Elias said softly. The child's eyes locked onto him immediately. For a moment she simply stared at his face carefully, like she was trying to understand why this human acted differently from everyone else. Then she quietly asked, "Why help me?" Her voice sounded weak and broken, almost unused. Elias knelt slightly in front of her. "Because you're scared," he answered simply. The child looked confused by the answer, almost like nobody had cared before. Then suddenly loud explosions shook the station entrance behind them. The soldiers immediately raised weapons. Heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel. But this time it was not the creature from the laboratory. Armored Varkal soldiers entered the station carrying black energy rifles, their glowing helmets scanning the darkness. "There!" one shouted instantly after spotting the child. Gunfire exploded across the station. Human soldiers fired back while taking cover behind broken machines and train cars. Sparks flew everywhere as energy blasts smashed into metal walls. Elias quickly pulled the child behind cover beside him. The little girl covered her ears fearfully while explosions shook the station around them. Then one Varkal commander stepped forward through the battle calmly, his dark armor covered in strange silver symbols. Unlike the others, he did not raise his weapon. He only stared directly at the child. His expression looked almost afraid. Then he spoke one sentence that froze everyone in the station. "If the human keeps protecting her," he said slowly, "the galaxy will burn." Gunfire echoed across the underground station, while sparks rained from broken metal walls. Human soldiers stayed behind cover beside the damaged train cars, firing desperately at the advancing Varkal troops. But Captain Elias barely heard the battle anymore. His attention stayed on the enemy commander standing calmly in the middle of the chaos. "If the human keeps protecting her," the commander repeated slowly, "the galaxy will burn." The small alien child beside Elias trembled badly after hearing those words. She grabbed his arm tightly without even realizing it. Elias looked down at her frightened face for 1 second, before turning back toward the commander. "What is she?" Elias shouted over the battle. The commander's glowing helmet stared directly at him. "You truly do not know," he answered, before Elias could ask more. A massive explosion destroyed part of the station ceiling. Smoke and debris crashed onto the battlefield, separating both sides instantly. The ground shook violently, old support beams snapped apart, and one of the giant train cars rolled across the tracks uncontrollably, crushing several Varkal soldiers beneath it. "Move!" Elias shouted. The human team quickly escaped deeper into the station tunnels while the entire underground structure slowly collapsed behind them. The child stayed close beside Elias the whole time, never leaving his side even once. The deeper they moved underground, the darker and colder the tunnels became. Old emergency lights barely worked anymore, filling the narrow hallways with weak red light. Water dripped from cracked pipes overhead, while distant explosions continued far behind them. One injured soldier leaned against the wall while breathing heavily. "We lost them?" he asked. "For now," Elias answered. The team finally stopped inside an abandoned control room, filled with dusty monitors and broken screens. Most machines were dead, but one old terminal still blinked weakly with power. Elias walked toward it carefully. "We need answers," he muttered. One soldier guarded the entrance while another watched the child nervously from across the room. She sat quietly in the corner now, knees pulled close against her chest, silver hair covering part of her face again. She looked less like a weapon and more like a frightened orphan hiding from the world. Elias activated the old terminal. The screen flickered several times before ancient files appeared across it. Most data had been deleted long ago, but one folder remained locked under military warning symbols, subject ZERO classified. Elias opened it. Instantly, dozens of damaged recordings appeared on the screen. The first video showed the same child years younger inside a white laboratory room, surrounded by scientists. She looked terrified. One scientist spoke toward the camera. Subject 0 continues showing unstable energy reactions. We still cannot fully understand her species. The video suddenly changed to another recording. This time, alarms screamed in the background while scientists ran through burning hallways. The child cried inside a containment chamber while soldiers pointed weapons at her. Then the recording ended in static. Another soldier stepped closer to the screen slowly. "This is wrong," he whispered. Elias continued searching through files until one final document appeared. But this file was different. It was not about experiments. It was history. Ancient star maps appeared across the screen beside images of a strange glowing civilization. Giant cities floating above oceans. Enormous ships shaped like silver stars. And tall beings with glowing eyes similar to the child's. A single line appeared beneath the images. "The Alari, last known peacekeepers of the galaxy." Elias frowned. "Peacekeepers?" The file continued. "Thousands of years ago, the Alari protected hundreds of worlds using powerful mental abilities, unlike any other species. But eventually the galaxy began fearing them. Some believed their powers were too dangerous. Others believed they could one day control all life itself. So the great empires united against them, and the Alari vanished forever, exterminated." The control room became silent. One soldier stared at the screen in disbelief. "She's the last one?" Nobody answered, because deep down, everyone already knew. Suddenly the child spoke softly from the corner. "They killed everyone." The room turned toward her instantly. She slowly lifted her head, golden eyes glowing weakly in the darkness. "I saw it," she whispered. Elias stepped closer carefully. "Saw what?" The child looked frightened again. "Dreams," she answered quietly. "Voices. Fire. Screaming." She pressed her hands against her head painfully. "So many people afraid." The lights inside the room suddenly flickered violently again. Metal objects began shaking across the floor. One nervous soldier raised his weapon slightly, fear returning to his face. But Elias quickly lowered the rifle with his hand. "Stop," he ordered. The child looked directly at Elias after hearing his voice. Slowly the shaking stopped again. The soldiers noticed it immediately. Only Elias could calm her powers. Before anyone could speak, the old terminal suddenly activated by itself. A new signal appeared on the screen. Incoming transmission. Then the image of the Varkal commander appeared through heavy static. His expression looked colder now. "You still do not understand the danger," he said. Elias narrowed his eyes. "Then explain it." The commander stayed silent for several seconds before answering. "The child's people were not destroyed because they were evil," he said quietly. "They were destroyed because their powers grow stronger through emotional bonds." His glowing eyes focused directly on Elias. "And humans are the first species in history able to connect with them completely." The room fell silent again. Then the commander spoke the words that changed everything. "If she truly trusts you," he said slowly, "there may soon be nothing in this galaxy powerful enough to stop her." The control room stayed silent long after the transmission ended. Nobody moved. Nobody even spoke. Only the weak sound of static came from the broken terminal screen. Captain Elias stared at the dark monitor while the Varkal commander's warning repeated again and again inside his mind. "If she truly trusts you, there may soon be nothing powerful enough to stop her." One soldier finally broke the silence. "Captain," he said carefully, "maybe they are right." Another soldier nodded nervously. "We've all seen what she can do. She stopped that creature without touching it. She nearly destroyed the station when she got scared." The child quietly lowered her head after hearing their words. Like she already expected people to fear her, Elias looked toward his team slowly. "She is not the enemy," he answered firmly. "But what if she becomes one?" A soldier asked immediately. Nobody had an answer for that. The room grew quiet again. Then suddenly emergency sirens echoed somewhere far above them. A cold automated voice spread through the underground tunnels. Orbital bombardment begins in 20 minutes. Remaining survivors are advised to evacuate immediately. The soldiers froze. The Varkal fleet was preparing to destroy the entire city, including everyone still trapped underground. "We need extraction now," one soldier said quickly. Elias activated his wrist communicator again, hoping command would finally respond. After several seconds, a familiar voice answered through heavy static. "Captain Varn, this is command." Elias immediately spoke. "We found Subject Zero alive," the voice answered almost instantly. "Status?" Elias looked at the child for a moment before replying. "She's stable." Several officers began speaking in the background on the other side of the signal. The voices sounded nervous, rushed, afraid. Then command returned. "Listen carefully," the officer said coldly. "Extraction has been approved for your squad only." Elias's expression darkened. "And the child?" he asked, already expecting the answer. Silence came first. Then command finally spoke. "Leave her behind." The child slowly looked up after hearing those words. Fear filled her golden eyes instantly. One soldier looked away uncomfortably. Unable to meet her gaze, Elias tightened his jaw. "She's coming with us," he answered firmly. "Negative," command replied immediately. "That thing is too dangerous. The Varkal fleet is willing to destroy an entire planet just to stop her. We cannot risk bringing her near human space." Elias looked at the frightened child again. She sat perfectly still now, almost like she was waiting for him to abandon her too. Just like everyone else probably had before. Then command gave the final order, if necessary. "Terminate the target before evacuation." The room became completely silent. The child's eyes slowly dropped toward the floor. She did not cry, did not scream. She simply looked tired. Like hearing people want her dead was normal now. Elias shut off the communicator without another word. One soldier stared at him in shock. "Captain." "Disobeying direct command is treason." Elias calmly loaded fresh rounds into his rifle. "Then I guess I'm guilty," he answered. For the first time since entering the ruins, the child looked at him with something different in her eyes. Not fear, not confusion, hope. Suddenly, a violent explosion shook the tunnel outside the control room. Dust fell from the ceiling while warning lights flickered wildly again. "They found us!" a soldier shouted. Gunfire erupted from the hallway seconds later. Varkal troops flooded into the tunnels firing energy weapons. Blue plasma blasts slammed into walls and machines, sending sparks everywhere. The human soldiers returned fire immediately while taking cover behind broken equipment. Elias grabbed the child's hand quickly. "Stay close," he ordered. She nodded instantly. Refusing to let go of him, the team escaped through an emergency maintenance tunnel while explosions echoed behind them. The narrow passage barely had enough space to run. Pipes and wires covered every wall. Steam burst from damaged vents around them. The child struggled to keep up, her small legs shaking from exhaustion. Then suddenly she stumbled hard onto the floor. Elias immediately stopped and helped her up. One soldier shouted from ahead, "Captain, we have to move." The child looked terrified again. "I'm sorry," she whispered weakly. Elias knelt beside her for 1 second, despite the danger closing behind them. "You have nothing to apologize for," he said calmly. The girl stared at him silently, almost shocked by the kindness in his voice. Then the tunnel behind them exploded apart. A massive armored creature crashed through the wall in smoke and fire. The same monster from the laboratory, its glowing red eyes locked directly onto the child. The soldiers opened fire desperately, but bullets barely slowed the beat. The tunnel fell into an unnatural silence. Even the distant explosions from above seemed to fade for a moment. The massive creature stood still, head lowered, as if it had forgotten why it was even fighting. Soft golden light slowly faded from around the alien child. But the calm feeling remained in the air like a heavy blanket. Captain Elias did not move. Neither did his soldiers. They all watched the impossible scene in front of them. The same monster that had destroyed armored squads in seconds now stood completely peaceful, like it was listening, The child slowly lowered her hand, still trembling slightly. Elias glanced at her carefully. "What did you do?" One soldier whispered in shock. The child shook her head weakly. "I didn't mean it," she said quietly. Her voice sounded confused, like even she didn't fully understand her own power. Before anyone could respond, loud alarms echoed through the tunnel again. This time not from the underground station, but from space itself. Elias activated his wrist communicator instantly. The screen flickered violently before a panicked voice broke through. "Captain Varn, do you read? This is Orbital Command." Elias answered quickly. "We're still alive." The voice sounded shaken. "The Varkal fleet has entered full attack formation. They are preparing planet-wide annihilation strike." One soldier cursed under his breath. "They're going to wipe the entire surface." Elias looked up slowly, realizing how serious the situation had become. If the fleet fired now, there would be no escape for anyone on Karen 9. Not humans, not Varkal, not even the child. Then command spoke again through the static. "Captain, extraction window is closing. You have less than 10 minutes. Elias looked at the child standing beside him. She looked back at him silently, already understanding what was coming. For the first time, she did not look scared of herself, only tired. One soldier stepped forward. "We have to leave now." But Elias did not move. Instead, he turned toward the creature still standing calmly behind them. Then something strange happened. The monster slowly stepped aside, clearing the tunnel path like it was obeying an invisible command. The soldiers froze again. "It's listening to her," one whispered. Elias understood now. Her powers were not destruction. They were connection. Emotion itself shaped everything around her. Fear created chaos. Trust created control. The tunnel suddenly shook violently again, this time stronger. Distant explosions were getting closer, meaning orbital strikes were beginning early. "We don't have time," a soldier shouted. Elias finally made his decision. "Move," he ordered. The team ran through the tunnel with the child staying right beside Elias, never letting go of his hand. The creature followed silently behind them like a guardian shadow. As they moved deeper, emergency lights began shutting down one by one. The entire underground system was collapsing. Finally, they reached a large maintenance elevator leading upward toward the surface, but it was broken, completely destroyed by previous attacks. One soldier slammed the control panel. "It's not working." Elias looked upward through the cracked tunnel ceiling. Faint light from space battles flickered above like distant thunder. "We take the emergency surface route," he said quickly. "That leads directly into the war zone," another soldier replied in disbelief. "We don't have a choice," Elias answered. Suddenly the ground shook violently again. A deep mechanical roar echoed through the planet. Orbital weapons were charging. The child covered her ears tightly, her breathing becoming unstable again. "No," she whispered. "Not again." Elias knelt beside her immediately. "Look at me," he said calmly. She slowly lifted her eyes. "You are not alone," he told her. The shaking around them suddenly slowed. Not stopped, just softened, like the world itself was waiting. Then a massive explosion tore through the upper layers of the underground station, sending shockwaves through every tunnel. "Go!" Elias shouted. The team ran up the emergency escape route as debris fell behind them. Metal stairs bent under pressure while fire spread through the lower tunnels. The creature followed closely, moving faster than before, protecting them from collapsing structures. Finally, they reached the surface exit. Elias pushed the heavy door open, and the world outside changed everything. The sky was no longer red. It was burning white. The sky above Karen 9 trembled in silence for a brief moment after her voice echoed across the battlefield. Even the Varkal fleet stopped firing for a few seconds, as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath. The alien child stood at the edge of the broken surface ruins, small against a burning world, but her glowing eyes were steady now. No more panic, no more uncontrolled fear, only something deeper, like understanding pain for the first time without breaking under it. Captain Elias stood beside her, watching the sky filled with massive warships. One soldier behind him whispered, "They are still going to fire." But Elias did not look away from the child. because he realized something important. This was no longer just about survival, it was about choice. Above them, the Varkal commander appeared again across the burning clouds, his massive image projected through orbital systems. "You are delaying the inevitable," he said coldly. "The galaxy cannot allow your existence to continue." The child looked up at him directly. Her hands were shaking, but she did not step back this time. Elias slowly moved his hand closer to hers, not grabbing, just staying near. A reminder that she was not alone. Then something strange happened. The creature that had followed them from the tunnels slowly emerged behind them, but it did not attack. Instead, it stood still like a silent protector. More movement appeared across the ruined ground. Other small creatures, previously hidden underground, began emerging too, broken, mutated, forgotten experiments from old labs, all reacting to the child's presence. The battlefield slowly filled with life that should not have survived. The Varkal commander noticed immediately. "What is this?" he demanded sharply. Elias looked up at the sky, then answered for the first time without fear. "This is what you created when you tried to erase her people." The commander's expression changed slightly. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in his voice. "You do not understand what she is." Elias stepped forward slightly, still beside the child. "Then tell me," he said calmly. A moment of silence followed. Then the commander spoke again. "The Alari were not just powerful," he said. "They were emotionally linked beings. Every child born among them could connect to others across space, feel their pain, their fear, their love." The child looked down slowly, like she already knew part of the story. The commander continued. "When they were destroyed, we believed we ended a threat, but we did not understand one thing." His glowing eyes focused directly on her. "The last one survived, and she is growing." The sky suddenly darkened further as fleet weapons began charging again. Elias tightened his grip slightly on his weapon, but did not raise it, because he understood now that guns would not stop this. The child slowly stepped forward alone, just a little, and spoke again. "Why are you all afraid of me?" Her voice was not loud, but it carried through every communication channel, every ship, every soldier watching across the galaxy. "I didn't choose to be like this," she said softly. "I just want the pain to stop." For a moment, nothing moved. Then something unexpected happened across the battlefield. A single Varkal soldier lowered his weapon, then another, and another, not because they were ordered, but because something in her voice reached them. The emotional link the commander feared was happening, but not as destruction, as understanding. The commander shouted, "Hold fire!" But it was already too late. The fleet systems began glitching, weapons misfiring, targeting systems locking down. Not from attack, but from overload of emotional interference spreading through communication networks. The child suddenly knelt down, holding her head as waves of emotion from thousands of soldiers hit her at once. Elias rushed forward immediately. "Stop pushing yourself." But she shook her head. "I can feel them, all of them." Tears formed in her eyes again, but this time they were not from fear, they were from connection. Every soldier above, human and Varkal alike, was now feeling something they had never felt from war before. The pain of the child they were about to erase. The commander looked shaken for the first time. "This is impossible," he whispered. Elias stood beside her again, looking up at the fleet. "She is not a weapon," he said firmly. "She is a mirror." Suddenly all fleet weapons went offline completely. The entire invasion force froze in orbit, unable to fire, unable to proceed. The galaxy's most feared war machine had been stopped without a single bullet,